Welcome to the Museum of Boulder and another evening with Boulder's extraordinary people. Tonight we have Marion Kreith. I'm Emily Zinn. I'm the Director of Education here at the museum. We have been around since 1944, and a group of Boulderites took it upon themselves to preserve the history and particularly the objects that document the story of Boulder's past. And so that is now in our hands 80 years later. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter, become a member, continue to support. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I want to thank the team here and the board and past and present that's here tonight. So a quick acknowledgement of them. Thank you. Also, please join us for the Native American Heritage and Restoration Program series. It begins tomorrow night and then is alternating Fridays throughout these 2 months, so spanning Indigenous Peoples Day and Native American Heritage Month. And so tomorrow night, that launches with Geraldine Dakota. Geraldine, you want to give a wink and a wave? Yeah. Who will be talking about Indian boarding schools both through a perspective of history and also through a personal perspective of her own family's experience with them. Then after that, this series continues with Charlie Cambridge next month. He was the first Native American to receive a PhD from CU Boulder. He has an amazing story and has seen many different attitudes towards equity in education, which he'll speak to. And so if you are passionate about equity in education, that is one not to miss. As always, these events are made possible from the generous support of our members, the City of Boulder, the Office of Arts and Culture, the Boulder Arts Commission, the SCFD, our Board of Trustees, the Institute for Museum and Library Services, and many others. And tonight's program is in collaboration with the Boulder JCC. Tonight's featured guest, as I said, is Marion Kreith, and she asked me to introduce her, and I want to tell a story as a matter of my introduction. So Marion and her late husband, Frank, who you will hear about, are very close and beloved friends of our family. And as my grandmother was pretty far into dementia, was forgetful enough that she would go on a walk around the memory care facility and tell us she'd just been to Turkey, that she was continuing to ask me to feature Marion Kreith, and in particular with Judy and the story of her time in Cuba and beyond. And so when I was asked to work with my colleague Nyasha on this program, Marion's name was at the top of my mind, and when we started talking, I brought up Marion. The hardest part about this program, Boulder Conversations with Extraordinary People, is narrowing down the extraordinary people in this community. We have some from past years in our midst tonight, but it is an endless number of people that we could name. And so when I talked about Marion, what Nyasha said is, you know what we should do to make sure that we were concerned about having too insular of a network, just asking people that we all know and that get asked to do a lot of things that we see present at Rotary and all over the place. And she said we should pick community partners and ask them to choose the speakers. And so with that, I had to break my heart a little and say goodbye to featuring Marion. And then we chose our community partners for this speaker series. They're all listed on these programs in your chairs. And when I called up the Boulder JCC, they said, you know who we would really love to feature is Marion Kreith. And it was a total coincidence. I promise I did not steer the conversation that direction. And I was coming up with what I was going to tell my grandmother, we call her Hama, in the afterlife if I never delivered on this. And so thank you to the JCC for allowing this to happen. Marion, I adore you, and I'm so looking forward to hearing your story.
It's mutual. Well, by now everybody knows that I'm Marion Finkels Kreith. Thank you for the museum and the JCC to having made this possible. I've not done this thing before, but I'll try to do the best I can. That thing is not working. Ah.
Okay. Talk really loud.
Can you hear me all right? This is on top of Mount Audubon many, many years ago. It is Ron and Marlies West, my husband and I, and Steve. Ron and Marlies were our longest and best and closest friends in Boulder. Ron and Frank collaborated on a couple of books, but more importantly, Emily, who organized this, is the granddaughter of Ron and Ron and Marlies. And so, with your permission, I would like to dedicate tonight to the West family. What is this? Oh, the point. Okay. All right. My parents were John and Rose Finkels, and they owned a dry goods store in Altona, which is a suburb of Hamburg, where I was born.
Sorry,
What is?
I think I'm going to do this.
What do you want to do?
Is that okay? Yeah.
It got away from me.
I know, yeah.
It
a
got away
slippery
from
one.
me. Okay.
I can progress them.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
All right. If we could go back to
yeah.
Okay.
You get a little teaser.
Can you start again?
Absolutely.
Go back quickly. Hey, you're giving the show away. Okay. This is a window of my parents' store. The window is filled with stockings, and a little crazy motto says, if you want your stockings to last, you've got to buy them at the Finkels store. This is me on the first day of school. The cornucopia at that time was filled with candy to make school sweeter. Now I understand they have gotten to be more practical, and they have filled it with school supplies. The year was 1933. Things against the Jews in Germany began to rumble. You could hear about it. I was no longer permitted to play with my non-Jewish friends. I was not permitted to go to a public school. I had to go to a parochial school, and on the way, of course, never knew if people would throw stones at me or not for being Jewish. Stores were shut down. Doctors, Jewish doctors, were no longer permitted to treat non-Jewish patients, and professors were kicked out of the university. It was a pretty hard time. Okay. Oh, okay. To the right is a Rosh Hashanah card which I made up for my parents in 1938. In it, it says, may you be well, may you be healthy, may you be inscribed in the book of life for the next year. But also, it said, may we have a new home soon. And that was a couple of weeks before the Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht happened because this was in retaliation of a Jewish person having killed a high-ranking Nazi official in Paris. And the Nazis looted stores, set synagogues on fire, took many people, sent them to the concentration camps, and killed many people. So it was high time to leave. I had an uncle in Belgium who invited us to come and stay with them. So we went to Belgium, and in 1940, on May 10th, 1940, Hitler invaded the lowlands, and there was nothing the Belgian army could do to keep the soldiers from advancing. So they used a diversionary thing by asking all people of German origin to come to the mairie, to the courthouse, to register. So my father went to register, but never came back. And for a long time, we had no idea what had happened to him. So at that time, the Belgians, who had horrible memories of the German invasion in the First World War, started taking to the street, trying to flee into France. And the roads were clogged with cars, with carts, with bicycles, trying to get away. We were among them, but we did not manage to cross the border into France, and stayed in a small summer resort town called La Panne in Belgium, which is about 10 kilometers north of Dunkirk. And so we were there when the Battle of Dunkirk raged. We were lying in the dining room of the hotel on the mattresses, listening to the absolute chaos that was going on outside. Bombs, people running back and forth, until early in the morning, you heard the goose-stepping German soldiers coming into town. So we had no choice but to get back to Brussels. I think we need, this is a Mother's Day card I made up for my mother in May of 1941. It showed my dad saying, "Let our father live." We had no idea where he was. It showed a little house, and it says, may the four of us very soon be living in this sweet little house. Now, around that time, as an absolute fluke, we found out where my father was, and he wrote to my mother and said, "Please try to come to Marseille, because there is a chance that we may get a visa to Cuba." So my mother started taking these mysterious trips to Antwerp, where there was an underground organization that brought Jews out from Belgium, out of unoccupied France. So she made contact, and we were told to meet at a certain place in Brussels. So we all showed up. The group had about 9 people. The oldest person was 84. My little sister was about 6 or 7. There was a lady who knew from absolutely nothing with a huge poodle by the name of Astrid, which happened to have been the name of the Belgian queen who had been killed a few years before. So we were asked to look like Belgian peasants out on a picnic. We looked anything like Belgian peasants out on a picnic. The guide was a short woman with a terrible Russian accent and absolutely red flaming hair. And she was the most conspicuous person you could ever imagine. How she was used at this underground guide, I don't know, but she did well. So she greeted us all. She said, put all your money in the handkerchief, and we shall go. So okay, we started with a very a trip to a city called Abbeville in northern France, where there was a very critical bridge to cross. The bridge was manned by German soldiers with the machine guns, but she managed to get us across. And then we went on the, oh, I forgot, I made the map of Europe. So you see, oh, this thing isn't working. You know Europe well enough to follow the
It's
map.
working, it's off the map.
So, I don't know how we managed to get through Paris. That I don't remember. But we were headed for Bordeaux, where we were supposed to take another train from Bordeaux to Marseille. But just before the last station, before Bordeaux, the woman comes to us in a panic and says, "Get out, get out, get out. They're picking up Jews in Bordeaux. It is not safe. Get out." So she opened the handkerchief, she turned us, gave us back the money, and said, "Good luck." So there we were in a field of wheat, I think it was, having no idea what to do next. And my little sister started walking. She was just about tall enough so we could see the back of her head above the wheat stalks, and we followed her. We were parched, absolutely parched. And we came to a farmhouse. They had no water. They had lots of white wine, so that's what we got, white wine. Now, the trick at that time was, of course, that you never knew if you met a person, was that person going to be sympathetic to you, or were they going to turn you over to the French police, to the German soldiers, and ultimately possibly to a concentration camp. But we were exceedingly lucky. The farmer was very helpful. He helped us, well, first of all, with the white wine, and then to catch us a train one station beyond Bordeaux into Marseille. Okay. Here we are in Marseille, in a dinky little hotel in downtown Marseille. We finally meet up with my father again, who at that time was in a camp just outside of Marseille. All we had to eat each night was tomatoes and onions. And whoever came to visit from the camp, my father or some other people, all we had to offer them was tomatoes and onions. But in Marseille, we also had to wait for the Cuban visa. And that was kind of tricky because to get the Cuban visa, you needed the French exit visa. To get that, you needed the transit visas to Spain and Portugal. And to get those, you needed the Cuban visa. So how my mother managed to get all of that together, I don't know. But she did, and we left Marseille. No, one back. What? No, okay, that's all right. Yeah. We left Marseille, traveled to Spain and Portugal, and took the ship in Portugal. Now, this was the year 1941, after the Spanish Civil War, and Spain was in absolute ruins. It was heartbreaking to travel through that country because it was so, so destroyed. But that was just a side note, but I remember that very clearly. From Portugal, we took the ship, the Colonial, my parents, a friend, me, and my little sister, and we crossed the Atlantic, and the war was on. We could have been torpedoed any time, but we were very, very lucky, and we reached Havana. Okay, next one. I remember this is the Morro Castle at the tip of the Havana harbor, and everybody sees it who comes into that town. It's an iconic picture of Cuba. I remember my father and I were standing on top of the ship just looking and saying how very, very grateful we are to be here. Now, Havana was to be a very, very short visit, waiting for the visa to America to finally come through. But on December the 7th, Pearl Harbor happened. America started being part of the war, and there was absolutely no way of even thinking about going to the States at that time. So I'd been to an English-speaking school because we thought we would leave very quickly, but then I went to a Cuban school called Escuela de Artes y Oficios, which had regular classes in the morning and vocational classes in the afternoon. I think I started working in leather. I'm not sure. But very shortly after I started that school, the University of Havana went on strike. The students brought in mattresses, the students brought in booze and food. They were going to have a great party while having their strike at the university. And my school somehow did the same thing. They went on strike for whatever reason. So it was decided then that rather than not go to school, I should join the garment workers and earn a living to support my family. Okay. Many of us were dependent on the Joint Distribution Committee, which helped Jews all over the world. But at that time, money was very, very tight. And the diamond industry saved a lot of people's lives by giving them a way to earn a living. The diamond industry came about because merchants from Holland and Belgium, very savvy diamond people, had fled to Havana and said to the government, look, will you let us open factories? And the arrangement was that half the workforce was Cuban, half the workforce were refugees. It was an absolute win-win situation. My daughter Judy made a film about the diamond period in Havana, which some of you may have seen. Well, as I said, it was a life-saving situation all around. In 1946, the visa finally came through, and we were able to come to the States. Now, Cuba is a very, very big society racially. The first thing I saw when we landed in Miami was colored waiting room, and that was not a very happy reception, but there it was. So we settled in Los Angeles. I became a secretary and had a very interesting job with the Council of Jewish Women. This was 46, 47. They did a lot of work in immigration, and they also had a service that was called the location service, where people in Los Angeles were looking for survivors in Europe, and vice versa, where survivors in Europe were trying to find their relatives in the States. It was a very, very gratifying job. And in the summer of 51, I met my husband. Frank had been at Princeton and was invited to come to teach at Berkeley. His parents lived in Los Angeles, and he went to visit them during that summer between the two jobs. And our parents knew each other, and so we met. We hardly knew each other, but we decided, well, we'll take a chance, and we got married. I was in LA, and a friend of mine drove me up to Monterey. Frank was already teaching, and he drove down to Monterey, so we got married in Monterey, and then, next one, off to Berkeley. Okay, that's the Campanelli. Let's see, not many of you here knew Frank, but he was a young Turk who broke nonsense from nobody, and boy, did he get into trouble. He started teaching. I started taking classes, and after 2 years, he was told he was let go. He was let go. Why was he let go? Well, you don't appear in the roster of professors, so you are let go. So for weeks and weeks, we wrote to every university in the States trying to find a job for him. And fortunately, the University of Lehigh in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, came through with a job. Next one. Okay. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania was not the most exciting of cities, but we were very, very glad that Frank had a job. And he said he had been at Princeton, but he couldn't have Princeton. So he said, well, since I didn't get any degree in Princeton, let me try to write a book. So he, Principles of Fee Transfer was the very first book he wrote. I was sitting there on a manual typewriter, typing the thing, tears streaming down my face because I didn't know what I was doing. But little did I know that this book and many that followed gave us all the goodies we have. But as I said, Bethlehem was not the most exciting of cities. Next one. But something else happened in Bethlehem. Our son Michael was born, and since we had two sets of grandparents in California, we traveled across country every summer to go and visit the grandparents. And stopping in Boulder, of course, we loved Boulder, fell in love with Boulder, and were delighted when Frank got invited to teach here at the university. Both my girls, Judith and Marcia, were born at the community hospital, now in shambles. And so by 1963, I had my lovely family all set. I think we're ready for the next slide. Yeah. Frank decided he was going to try to do some work in Paris. And so we bundled up everybody and took the whole family to Paris for a whole year. The kids went to school. I took some classes, and Frank did his work, trying to get the work done for his doctorate. One Sunday, we decided to go and visit the cathedral at Chartres. Little did we know that it was a very, very important Catholic holiday. I think it was called Day of Ascension. I'm not sure. And priests
Just gonna
and
make sure the
nuns.
mic is on.
What?
Just making
Okay.
sure the mic is on.
Priests and nuns had. Can I leave it?
Here, I'll just.
Had come from all over the region to attend this magnificent service, and it was a beautiful service. But at one moment, when everybody was silent, my daughter Judy, sitting up on my lap, says to me, "Mais maman, Dieu, ça n'existe pas." But Mom, God, that doesn't exist. We were stared at by everybody. So, but Frank kept working away at his doctorate. Came the day of defense, and in Europe apparently defense is a family affair. So we bundled up everybody, went to where it was held, and Frank's French wasn't very good yet. So I don't think he understood the questions, but he burst forth with everything he knew, and the guys looked at each other, kind of nodded their heads and said, "Okay, I think we know you're okay," and gave him his doctorate. It was a fantastic year in Paris. Next one. So back to Boulder. Frank was teaching. The kids were in school, and I took some classes, but I also did some other things. For 2 stints, for 10 years each, I was the Democratic committee woman for my precinct. The first time around, the committee man was Chris Brackley. I don't know if any of you know him here. And we went from door to door to door. It was a very efficient way to know your precinct. The second time around, also for 10 years, was with Bob Dudley. I don't know if any of you Bob Dudley, but by that time, they were giving us huge printouts, and it was a very inefficient way to know your precinct. I have no idea whether any canvassing is being done now, but God knows we need all the work we can for the coming election. As I said, I took. What else did I do? Oh, I helped a friend of mine open a language training center, which was quite successful. And it was the only time in my life I had a business card, and that felt very, very good.
Boulder Reads?
What?
Oh, Boulder Reads.
Okay. Under the auspices of the Boulder Library, I taught reading at the jail, and that had some story by itself, but not tonight. Frank, and this was not just that year, but way into the future. Frank started a journal of solar engineering, which I ran for him. But that was at a time there was no computer stuff, so everything was done manually. A paper came, it had to be copied, it had to be sent out to reviewers, it finally came back. If it was good enough and accepted, it was sent to the publisher. In any case, I spent so much time at the post office almost became my second home. And we also got some rentals, and I ran the rentals, and I tried to be a kind and conscientious landlady to our many Boulder renters, and that was gratifying as well. Now, Frank, of course, was teaching, and in the early 1970s, SERI was started, the Solar Energy Research Institute was started, and he was one of the first employees. His employee number was number 6. He spent 10 years at SERI as the chief of thermal research, and the high point, of course, was President Carter's visit in May of 78. President Carter is 100 years old. He's frail. He was a good man. He was a truly, truly good man. But one day, a colleague of Frank's comes to me to alert me that Frank was going to be fired. So I said, why? He said, because he's not a team player. And I said, yeah, but he's pretty good at pulling chestnuts out of the fire. What are you going to do? And he said, let them burn. So that was the good years at SERI. Fortunately, after SERI, he found a job with the NCSL, National Council for State Legislatures, which is a government organization that does research on all kinds of things in order to help lawmakers make sensible decisions and sensible proportions. There was one young lawmaker who proposed a certain thing, and the people said, no, you can't do that. It defies the second law of thermodynamics. And the lawmaker said, well, we're just going to have to change that law. The one thing I remember us doing research on, which is very mundane, was which is more efficient, paper diapers or regular diapers? And in spite of all of the money spent on water, on soap and on energy, it was decided that paper diapers are ultimately more efficient. But that was only part of the research. While he was there, he wrote a book on waste management, and he wrote a book on transportation. So it was a very, very useful time that he spent there. He wasn't fired, believe it or not, he wasn't fired. The only reason he left was that the office moved from downtown Denver to what used to be the old DIA, and that was too much commotion, too much having to commute for him. So after that was finished, he was asked back to teach at the university, so the circle was full. He left his work teaching as he started, and he got to be a little bit frail, of course, and there was a lot of chauffeuring to the university, chauffeuring to medical appointments, and all that. But during all those many years, we had some fantastic travels. I think, okay. This was, we had been at the University of Ben Gurion in Beersheba a long time ago. We came back for its 25th anniversary, and we had given them some money, and our names were put on the wall of the university. The other show is the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and the beautiful, beautiful mosque on top of the mount. Tomorrow is Yom Kippur, the holiest holiday in the Jewish religion. It's the Day of Atonement, and I only wished that the universe would atone for the mess the world is in right now. And all we can do is hope that some kind of sanity and solution will happen for the horrible, horrible tragedies in the world today. Your battery is running out.
Here, why don't you have some water? Want some water?
Yeah.
I know I'm taking it away so you can talk with your hands. So you can talk with your hands. Yeah. So you can talk with your hands
Oh.
a little bit.
I should talk with my hand.
No, but I'm afraid you're going to knock it over. There you go. All right.
Okay. Next one. All right. Before I talk about our trips, I want to backtrack a moment to tell you that Frank kept on writing many books. The last one was co-authored by Professor Jenna Milford, who's here today. Thank you for being here. So you will see, books were his passion. So, well, to the travels now. It was very difficult to separate out the sequencing and the themes on this talk, but I tried the best. So while we were in Paris, we took a side trip to Greece, and from there we went on a little tour on one of the islands. Michael, they were very sweet. They let Michael run the boat for a while, and then we went into the interior of this island with little Judy sitting on the biggest horse, Marcia in the middle, and poor Frank on the tiniest donkey they could find. The next slide is from Thailand, but I'll talk about Thailand in a little while. Frank had this wonderful ability to combine conferences, lectures with vacation. So we were in Taiwan, we were in Turkey, we were in Spain, we were in Germany. We crossed Yugoslavia up and down. I never thought that I would see that much of the world. It was a pretty wonderful thing. So I want to tell you about two trips. One was in 1938. Frank had been invited to Trondheim in Norway to assist at a PhD hearing of one of the students who had been a student, who had come from Norway to be a student. So we went to Trondheim. I mentioned Trondheim in Norway because it has the most efficient waste disposal system. They have a huge furnace. All the garbage of the city comes into the furnace, and the heat heats the city. What could be more practical? But we are not quite there yet. On the way to Trondheim, we stopped in England. We stopped in Wales. Now, Frank was born in Vienna, left Vienna on what is known as a Kindertransport. This was a program started by Chamberlain to bring Jewish children from Germany and Austria to England. And it was quite successful. There were horrible scenes at stations over Europe of children saying goodbye to their parents, and most of the kids never saw their parents again. They perished. Now, when Frank came to England, he really first stayed with some kind of doctor in London, and it was very unsatisfactory. So he went to a farm in Wales, run by a young woman by the name of Jane Owens. And he thought what he would love to do was try to see if he could meet up with that woman again. So we rented a car, went from town to town, inquiring about the place, which was named Masma, and it had a pond. That's all he remembered. So we went from little town to little town, asking, would anybody know about this farm? And finally, somebody said, oh yes, I know the farm. Janet married a local historian. They're living in a small cottage on the premises. So we drove, we find the cottage, we look through the window, and there are these two elderly people trying to chase a mouse. And then when Janet came to the door and looked at Frank and said, oh my God, because just the night before, they had watched a program on the Kindertransport on which Frank had come to them, and there he was standing at their doorstep. It also happened to be the very first day, 50 years to the day, since Chamberlain declared war on Germany. So they asked us to stay. We had a very memorable evening, and then of course went on to Trondheim. Another trip I want to talk about was Thailand. Frank was invited to the University of Chiang Mai to give a talk on waste disposal. Now, Chiang Mai, Thailand is vastly different from Norway. It is very wet. And I don't think he was able to do them much good in terms of finding solutions to their waste program. But shortly before we left, the chairman of the department comes to him and says, look, I've got all these great students. They all want to come to America for their graduate work. All they know about is MIT, Princeton, that fancy lab out in Pasadena. I can't think of his name right now. What I would like to do is bring them, show them other campuses, and see if I can't get them to do their graduate work in America in less demanding schools. So all I need, he said, is an invitation from an American institution. So Frank got him an invitation from the university right here. And one happy morning, up shows this enormous baby blue van, and out of it tumble Mr. Setchwan, the chairman, 2 secretaries, and 10 students. And I had told them I could maybe accommodate two or three students, but Mr. Setchwan looks at our house and says, great, we can all stay here. So for 5 days, we had Thai have pitch black hair. So there were all these bodies with pitch black hair, sleeping all over the place, with a great deal of empty Jack Daniel bottles lying around. They loved to drink. And for 5 days, we had the best Thai food they cooked for us. And Mr. Setchwan was able, actually, to place most of the students in less demanding universities than Princeton and that sort of thing. What next?
Next slide.
Well, life after that slowed down a little bit. As I said, Frank wasn't.
Next.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Frank wasn't getting any younger, although by God he kept on with writing his books. And for one of his birthdays, I made up a limerick for him. And it says, my wonderful husband is Frank, a heat transfer guy of high rank, who spent his life writing, stupidity fighting, while gallons of good wine he drank. It's my best limerick. I love making up limericks. This is a good one. Now, many years ago, Frank was in Switzerland, and he very much wanted to climb the Matterhorn. That was on a Wednesday. And the next day, the guy said, no, the weather is bad, let's wait till tomorrow. Well, Thursday, the weather was worse, and he never got to do the climb. So shortly before he died, I asked him, do you have any regrets? And he thought for a minute, and he said, I should have climbed the Matterhorn that Wednesday. I think, yeah, next one. Okay. This is a picture of his memorial and invitation. And Judy, you said you were going to read what he said.
I know it's up there. If I can escape this existential crisis, the Holocaust, I do not want to simply exist, but try to pay back my good fortune in a positive way.
And if you look at all of his books, he certainly did. I now want to talk to you about my son, Michael. Okay. Frank passed away in January of 2018. He was very, very ill with mandibular cancer. Fortunately, we had worked very hard a few years before to get Proposition, I think it was 106, medical aid in dying passed, and he was able to avail himself of that wonderful invention, or whatever you want to call it. Michael, my son, our son, that was in January. Our son committed suicide in August of that same year. He had been living with bipolar all of his life, courageously, productively. For instance, when he was in Boulder, he taught skiing to children. He married Joe Panther, an Irish woman, and in Ireland, he became a very, very highly recognized traditional Irish basket bakers, and he's at the market there selling his wares. And they had the wonderful son, Daniel, who at the age of 28 now is a barrister in Limerick. Anyone of you here living with a loved one with mental illness knows what a heartbreaking life it is and can be. And all I can say is that Michael probably, by committing suicide, saved himself years and years of an intolerable future. I think next. Oh, so since then, of course, my life has become much less exciting in many ways. And what do I do now? Lots of bridge on the computer. Every once in a while, I get sentimental, and here I am trying to organize the many awards that Frank got through his lifetime. There were many of them. I used to think sometimes, by God, he should get an award for having gotten all those awards. But I'm very lucky. Very lucky. Next slide, please. I have a wonderful family. Chris and Judy, who are my main caregivers at this time. My other daughter, Marcia, and her husband, George, who call in from in Washington, state of Washington. Ariel and Sarah, my granddaughters, and my wonderful Irish grandson, Daniel. I am very lucky and very grateful. So, last one. Okay, that's me this was taken on my at my 97th birthday party last August. I think I forgot somebody. I can't think about that. And so, all I can say, I've lived a rich life, and I'm very grateful for my life. And I thank the museum and the JCC for the opportunity to have shared my story with you.
Thank you so much, Marion. And so we have some time for questions, and then we have a special treat at the end, a performance once questions are over.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to go back to Germany years later? Like, was that difficult? Did you want to go back into Germany?
No, we only went back once. Frank had, oh, sorry. We only went back once. Frank had a conference in Munich, and it wasn't very. That was the only time we went back. But a funny story. The Philharmonic was playing in Munich that day, and Frank had a colleague who was very, very self-assured, and we were hoping to get into the concert. The guy knew Leonard Bernstein. It was the New York Philharmonic who was playing there at the time, and he said, wait you guys, I'll go and talk to him, and he'll let us in. Well, he came back a few minutes later, face was down. No way was there to get anyone else into the concert that night. It was sold out. I'm sorry, it was just a memory that came back to me. But no, Munich was the only time, and no, we never went back. Yeah.
I actually have a question for Judy. Many people may not have seen your wonderful documentary about the fascinating period in Cuba. Is there a way for people to see it?
Yes, oh, thank
Again,
you.
yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, our film is our film distributor, the National Center for Jewish Film, the NCJF. We have the film, it's on Vimeo on demand, and so you can see it if you go to the National Center for Jewish Film. It's on, and we also have our website, Forgotten Jewels Film, and you can reach it through that. Thank you. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, yeah.
I want to say, I remember when I was an undergraduate, 1956, so not that much after World War II, and it took me a while as a young student, but I began to realize how many of my professors were German Jews, and it made me understand what a gift all of you are to this country.
I was a student at the time. I was not doing very well, and I was asked to write a letter of recommendation for Kay Ho, who was a marvelous professor. Did you get the job?
I'm still here, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I may miss this. So did your husband see his parents again, or was he part of the Crystal Mountain?
Well, yeah, his parents had immigrated to Los Angeles, and our parents knew each other, and that's how we met.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
They came across on a ship, right? They came across on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did I forget anything? I don't know.
Other
Yeah.
I was wondering, did many people go through Cuba?
Can you hear that?
Did
I
many
can't hear
people-
very well, so she'll have to give me your question.
I was wondering if many refugees came through Cuba, how that came about, how did that route come about?
Yeah. Do you want to answer?
Wait a
Do
minute.
you want me to answer?
What
It's
was
about
that?
Cuba.
Yeah.
So close to 12,000 Jewish refugees were allowed into Cuba in 2 waves. The first wave came soon from 1938 after the, I'm not sure how to say it, the Anschutz, when many German and Austrian refugees had to flee. That was the first wave, and many of them came to Cuba under dubious circumstances. And then there was a tragedy, a terrible situation called the SS St. Louis, a ship that was turned away because of serious Nazi propaganda, and it was almost set up, that ship. And then the doors were closed. That was President Federico Loredo Bru, who was in charge, or president at that time. And then Fulgencio Batista, was elected as president in 1940. And Batista, for a variety of reasons, many people have different reasons, but he was a businessman. And he knew, I think, some of the diamond merchants were coming. Some people said he had actually a soft spot for the refugees. And he opened the gates again in 1940 when he was elected. And that was the second wave. My mom came in the second wave in 1941. Another 6,000 Jewish refugees were let in at that time. So 12,000 altogether. It's not a very well-known story, but a big, big number for an island like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all.
One more,
more
there's one
Thank
more.
you.
Oh, Edward.
How
What?
many of the Jewish families that immigrated to Cuba stayed?
Pardon?
How many?
None?
How many of the? I do, Catherine. I hope it's okay. Catherine also has history of
My
her
grandparents-
family.
My grandparents went to Cuba because my father's brother had Down syndrome, so they were not allowed into the United States because they didn't take in with disabilities. So both my grandparents and their son with Down syndrome, my uncle, wound up in Cuba, and my grandfather's buried there in 56. We saw his grave when we went. And when Castro came to power, there was a huge flight.
Right.
But there's still a couple of very small congregations in Cuba,
Mhm.
and there's still some Jewish history there. We did a Jewish tour
Definitely.
from the JCC about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah. And a lot of the Jews who came in the second wave, they had family in other places. They either came to the U.S. Some went back to Europe, to Belgium, but all of them, and some went to Israel. But I found out when I went to Miami and showed the film there that were a lot more refugees from that period that had stayed and that fled when Castro came to power. So that was a real new education for me too, to find out how many had stayed.
Thank you.
So I have a group of lovely dancers. They're friends. This is a very, very short little demonstration of Cuban cha-cha-cha. And it also includes a little bit of something called rueda. All right, the cha-cha-cha was the first rueda that people did in Cuba. And so, I hope you enjoy. It's very short, very sweet, and we're so happy to. This is Cammie and Drew and Debbie. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And I just want to say, great job, Mom.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. We have practiced, but this is great. So, and thank you so much, Emily and Alan. All right, thank you. Here we go.
so we have some time for questions, and then we have a special treat at the end, a performance once questions are over.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to go back to Germany years later? Like, was that difficult? Did you want to go back into Germany?
No, we only went back once. Frank had, oh, sorry. We only went back once. Frank had a conference in Munich, and it wasn't very. That was the only time we went back. But a funny story. The Philharmonic was playing in Munich that day, and Frank had a colleague who was very, very self-assured, and we were hoping to get into the concert. The guy knew Leonard Bernstein. It was the New York Philharmonic who was playing there at the time, and he said, wait you guys, I'll go and talk to him, and he'll let us in. Well, he came back a few minutes later, face was down. No way was there to get anyone else into the concert that night. It was sold out. I'm sorry, it was just a memory that came back to me. But no, Munich was the only time, and no, we never went back. Yeah.
I actually have a question for Judy. Many people may not have seen your wonderful documentary about the fascinating period in Cuba. Is there a way for people to see it?
Yes, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, our film is our film distributor, the National Center for Jewish Film, the NCJF. We have the film, it's on Vimeo on demand, and so you can see it if you go to the National Center for Jewish Film. It's on, and we also have our website, Forgotten Jewels Film, and you can reach it through that. Thank you. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, yeah.
I want to say, I remember when I was an undergraduate, 1956, so not that much after World War II, and it took me a while as a young student, but I began to realize how many of my professors were German Jews, and it made me understand what a gift all of you are to this country.
I was a student at the time. I was not doing very well, and I was asked to write a letter of recommendation for Kay Ho, who was a marvelous professor. Did you get the job?
I'm still here, so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I may miss this. So did your husband see his parents again, or was he part of the Crystal Mountain?
Well, yeah, his parents had immigrated to Los Angeles, and our parents knew each other, and that's how we met.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
They came across on a ship, right? They came across on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did I forget anything? I don't know.
And they're,
Yeah.
I was wondering, did many people go through Cuba?
Can you hear that?
Did
I
many
can't
people-
hear very well, so she'll have to give me your question.
I was wondering if many refugees came through Cuba, how that came about, how did that route come about?
Yeah. Do you want to answer?
What?
Do you want me to answer?
What
It's
was
about
that?
Cuba.
Yeah.
So close to 12,000 Jewish refugees were allowed into Cuba in 2 waves. The first wave came soon from 1938 after the, I'm not sure how to say it, the Anschutz, when many German and Austrian refugees had to flee. That was the first wave, and many of them came to Cuba under dubious circumstances. And then there was a tragedy, a terrible situation called the SS St. Louis, a ship that was turned away because of serious Nazi propaganda, and it was almost set up, that ship. And then the doors were closed. That was President Federico Loredo Bru, who was in charge, or president at that time. And then Fulgencio Batista, was elected as president in 1940. And Batista, for a variety of reasons, many people have different reasons, but he was a businessman. And he knew, I think, some of the diamond merchants were coming. Some people said he had actually a soft spot for the refugees. And he opened the gates again in 1940 when he was elected. And that was the second wave. My mom came in the second wave in 1941. Another 6,000 Jewish refugees were let in at that time. So 12,000 altogether. It's not a very well-known story, but a big, big number for an island like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all.
One more.
One more
There's
question.
one more.
Thank you.
Oh, Edward.
How
What?
many of the Jewish families that immigrated to Cuba stayed?
Pardon?
How many?
None?
How many of the? I do, Catherine. I hope it's okay. Catherine also has history of
My
her
grandparents-
family.
My grandparents went to Cuba because my father's brother had Down syndrome, so they were not allowed into the United States because they didn't take in with disabilities. So both my grandparents and their son with Down syndrome, my uncle, wound up in Cuba, and my grandfather's buried there in '56. We saw his grave when we went. And when Castro came to power, there was a huge flight.
Right.
But there's still a couple of very small congregations in Cuba,
Mhm.
and there's still some Jewish history there. We did a Jewish tour
Definitely.
from the JCC about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah. And a lot of the Jews who came in the second wave, they had family in other places. They either came to the U.S., some went back to Europe, to Belgium, but all of them, and some went to Israel. But I found out when I went to Miami and showed the film there that were a lot more refugees from that period that had stayed and that fled when Castro came to power. So that was a real new education for me too, to find out how many had stayed.
Thank you.
So I have a group of lovely dancers. They're friends. This is a very, very short little demonstration of Cuban cha-cha-cha. And it also includes a little bit of something called rueda. All right, the cha-cha-cha was the first rueda that people did in Cuba. And so, I hope you enjoy. It's very short, very sweet, and we're so happy to. This is Cammie and Drew and Debbie. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And I just want to say, great job, Mom.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. We have practiced, but this is great. So, and thank you so much, Emily and all.